Senator Foyle.
Here.
Here. Senator Fields. Present. Here. Senator Boudreaux.
Present.
Here. Senator Jackson. Present. Here. Senator McMath. Here. Senator Reese.
Here.
Here. Senator Womack.
Here.
Here. You have 7 and present in the quorum.
Thank you. Good morning to everyone who's here. I would ask anyone that's going to testify or provide information to fill out a white card and give that white card to the Sergeant at Arms. By signing the white card, you're attesting that your testimony, or you're agreeing that your testimony is under oath. First order of business we have, members, is we have the minutes to approve from the December 6th meeting. It's in your folder. Do I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Senator Fields moves that we approve the minutes from the December 6th meeting without objection, so ordered. First up on our agenda, we'd like to follow up with Colonel Davis from our last meeting. Colonel, if you can come to the table, please. Colonel, we have some specific questions for you, but before we go into that, do you have any additional remarks you'd like to make from where we left off from the last meeting?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. Colonel Lamar Davis, Louisiana State Police. Again, thank you all for visiting with us today. I know based upon the last conversation we had, there was some other unfinished business, one of those being a Force Investigative Unit. So at some point, if you're open to it, then I'd like to have my team from the Force Investigations Unit come up, talk about that concept and our strategy for moving forward.
Senator Boudreaux had actually made that request of the committee, so if you'll bring them up, I'm going to let Senator Boudreaux ask them some questions.
Okay.
Before we do, Mr. Chairman,
Senator
do
Fields.
we have a witness card from the Colonel?
We should.
Can't see it.
Are you good? Senator Boudreaux.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colonel, I got some information on it, and I'm actually here to listen to find out more about exactly where we are and the differences that and some of the changes that we're talking about implementing separate and apart from internal affairs. So I wanted to see how and where this unit was going, and I basically thought the presentation would be very beneficial to the committee and to the community as a whole. So I'll defer to the presentation, and then if there's any follow-up, I would at that point hit them.
Yes, sir. As mentioned in the last meeting, we've made some fundamental changes with regards to policies, training, and so forth. And one of the best practices that we identified with regards to investigations has been the Force Investigative Unit. And speaking with whether it be NOPD and or some other agencies that have either undergone consent decree and or have undergone and experienced some issues with their investigations, they have, in working with the federal authorities, created really a concept that continue to build trust, but also build expertise in their departments whereby they could conduct those investigations and do so with integrity and so forth. So, and speaking with those agencies, we found it beneficial to really derive that concept, bring it here to LSP, and see how we could benefit from it, not only as an agency, but also from a community standpoint. And that's what you'll hear today. So I'll turn it over. I have Lieutenant Colonel Van Buren, Kenny Van Buren. He's here. He's my Bureau of Investigations Deputy Superintendent. Then I have Major Turner. Major Turner is also, he's Command Inspector of Bureau of Investigations. So I'll turn it over to them.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and committee members. My name is Kenny Van Buren, and I am the Deputy Superintendent for the Bureau of Investigations, having been in this position since January of this year, 2021. So prior to my appointment in the position that I currently hold, I served as commander in our Gaming Enforcement Division. Also have served in the detectives, our narcotics unit, our insurance fraud division, and also our criminal intelligence unit. I'll just give you a quick background. So today I'd like to share with you in part just some of the things that the Bureau of Investigation has been diligently working on. Some of our agencies, I'll call it our most pressing issues. So shortly after Colonel Davis's appointment to Superintendent of State Police, we quickly come to realize that our agency has some critical needs. And one of those critical needs being how we looked at use of force investigations and complaints that would come in. And so it was decided that we would create a specialized unit, our Force Investigations Unit, to investigate all troop-involved use of forces, or to include also other commissioned personnel within the state police. And so Colonel Davis, he tasked the Bureau of Investigations to conduct a study to include evaluation of other agencies throughout the nation with regards to their training, their investigatory processes, their reporting requirements, and personnel accountability, but two, what we come to learn about critical incident briefings. And just a snapshot of what that is. In part, these critical incident briefings are used, quite honestly, just to inform the public of the facts of an incident involving those critical events. And in doing so, ensuring that the public is informed, and maybe by doing that, and having that point of transparency is what I call it, maybe garnering that trust and confidence, which is obviously a big deal for us at this juncture. So the critical incident briefings will be covered by Major Turner during his presentation. But Colonel Davis made his vision clear, and it was very clear to all of us. He stressed that he wanted a thorough assessment of other agencies and amalgamation of best practices that would meet the expectations placed on our agency by the citizens of our state. A research team was assembled by Major Jason Turner. It also included Captain Bo Loomis, Captain Treon Labradine, Captain Belinda Murphy, Lieutenant Craig Rhodes, Sergeant Gus Bethea, Chris Anderson, and a host of other troopers who make up some of the most knowledgeable and proficient criminal administrative investigators within our agency. So contact was made with 20+ agencies throughout the nation. And Jason Turner, Major Turner can speak more to that. And so we did. We evaluated and assessed their policies, their procedures, to understand both their investigative processes and how they evaluated force incidents to include those established standards that would actually trigger a use of force investigation. And so it's through these evaluations and the scrutinizing of these external policies that we were able to glean into their playbook, if you will, and we formulated our own policy and procedures. Upon receiving Colonel Davis's approval, we actually built that model using these best practices. And the structure that we came up with is, in fact, it fits into the model of what they call a FIT model, which we will talk about a little bit later. But we felt that this FIU model would best suit our agency's needs, the needs, desires, and expectations of our stakeholders, which is really critical. So in short, our Force Investigation Unit is consistent, once again, with the FIT model, and we'll talk about in a little bit more detail with Major Turner. And these investigators will be dedicated to investigate, in part, all officer-involved shootings, use of chokeholds, intentional strikes to the head or neck with impact weapons, also in custody deaths, any discharge of a firearm, any incidences of retaliatory force, or any incidents alleged to or potentiality, if you will, of any criminal negligence. So, as a team, you know, it's vital. It's vital that we get this thing right. We don't have the luxury of getting this wrong. Right now, there's a lot of hypersensitivity, and we know that we don't have a whole lot of wiggle room. And that's one of the reasons that we did look out throughout the nation, and we looked at those other agencies, how they were doing what they did. Was it working? Was it not working? If it wasn't working, why wasn't it working? And so we took those things to build the structure that we have. And so it's understood, too, that when we talk about our critical incident briefings, you know, it's important. Understanding that there may be some restriction, not necessarily on us or by us, rather, but because of, you know, whether there be some prosecutorial concerns or some other legal issue that may restrict that, but we are in a position and we're postured to actually push this information forward because we believe that the public has a right to know. And so here's what we ask today in a very humble way. We just ask for your help. We ask for your support in getting this thing and this initiative across the finish line. We're going to need each one of you guys. We ask that you believe us when we tell you that we've seen the things that you've seen. We've seen it. I venture to say that we've heard some of the things that you've heard, and it's bothersome, it's concerning. Believe us when we tell you that we share in your disappointment. We share in your consternation. We share in your frustration. And we completely understand the demand for accountability and reform. And that's what we are. And where we are with regards to this process, quite honestly, it's non-negotiable. You know, it's part of our social contract. You know, the public expects this of us. And so we have a ways to go. We understand that what we're dealing with, this is not just a state police problem. This is a state Louisiana problem. And so we talk about processes and we talk about policies and those things that we're going to implement. And it takes commitment from all of us to make sure that this thing is done correctly. I say this, we can implement all the policies and all the processes that they're already implementing. But those policies and processes are only as good as those people who are tasked with ensuring and making sure that those things are adhered to. And so that's a people problem. And I'll go so far as to say this. When you think about the state police as an entity, there's really nothing wrong with the state police. There's something wrong with some of the people in the state police. And to Senator Fields' point from last week, is that percentage that we have to identify, and we have to take measures to either correct the behavior or we eradicate those people, right? And so where we are right now, and Colonel Davis stresses this all the time to us, you know, we train and we retrain, we mentor and we coach. Part of that process is counseling. And if we can't change the behavior of the people, we can't change the people, then we change the people. And so we're committed to that. And so we really just ask your support because I believe this too. I believe it's going to require our collaborative energy and our collaborative intellect to get us where we need to be as an agency. And we're very much in tune with the desires of our stakeholders. We understand that, and we're committed to doing just that. So in closing, unless there are any immediate questions of me, I would like to yield to Major Turner, who's our Command Inspector for the Bureau of Investigation. We also have Captain Mark Fontenot here, who's the commander of our newly formed Force Investigation Unit. And they will share with you in more detail their research, the structure of the unit, their training requirements, the investigative process, and also the critical incident briefings that I mentioned.
Colonel, why don't you stay at the table? Let the Major make his presentation. Then we have some questions probably for both of you.
Yes, sir.
Or maybe all three of you. Thank you, Major. Go ahead.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, and committee members. I'm Major Jason Turner. I'm the Command Inspector for the Criminal Investigation Division. I've spent approximately 20 of my 25 years in investigations. Most recently served as a Region 3 CID commander. I've also worked assignments in criminal intelligence, insurance fraud, gaming, and patrol at Troop G in Bossier. As Colonel Van Buren mentioned, in the very near future, a new 15-person statewide unit of specially trained force investigation unit detectives will begin investigating all DPS-related use of force incidents that are potentially criminal in nature. All use of force incidents involving DPS personnel must be thoroughly investigated in an unbiased, comprehensive, and timely manner. FIU detectives will conduct these investigations for the state police and will report directly to Colonel Davis. In addition to officer-involved shootings and in-custody deaths, FIU will investigate incidents where chokeholds are used, any strikes to the head with a hardened object, incidents of ramming, any incidents where potential retaliatory force is used, and gross deviation from policy regarding the use of conducted energy weapons such as tasers. In addition to ensuring accountability, FIU will submit reports simultaneously to appropriate district attorneys and internal affairs, as well as develop protocols to notify the FBI Civil Rights Division early in the investigative process if there is apparent criminal conduct by a trooper. FIU detectives will also conduct monthly use of force related best practices training at each troop in conjunction with our training academy staff, as well as produce a comprehensive use of force annual report, also in conjunction with the training academy. This use of force data will be reported to the FBI's National Use of Force Data Collection Database. As Colonel Van Buren mentioned, we selected the Force Investigation Unit model because it's a proven model based on best practices that has been in use by numerous agencies for quite a number of years. Notably LAPD since 2006, NOPD for the last 10 years, Las Vegas Metro PD, as well as others. Several state police agencies are coming online with this model, notably Minnesota, Georgia, Indiana, and Florida's FDLE. This model ensures accountability and has the added advantage of being easily upcycled for transparency. Regarding transparency, we are aware the public is more engaged and demands more information related to critical incidents than in the past. We believe we can strike a balance between maintaining the integrity of the case and the mandate for transparency. As a result, FIU will coordinate closely with the State Police Public Affairs section to produce and release critical incident briefing videos of use of force incidents. What are critical incident briefing videos? CIB videos are 8 to 10 minute videos that are factual in nature and explain the facts surrounding the critical incident, known at the time of the production of the video in a manner the public can easily understand. We reached out to LAPD's Force Investigation Division, who were extremely helpful to us. They have a 100-person strong media relation division that has been producing critical incident briefing videos since 2016. They explained their CIB videos have been extremely well received by the public, lawmakers, the media, and their officers. Their CIB videos include body-worn and in-car camera videos, surveillance camera videos, cell phone videos, as well as other relevant information such as 911 calls and the suspect's action while narrator's voice explains the sequence of events surrounding the critical incident. I highly encourage you to visit LAPD's official YouTube website to view their CIB videos. Our goal is to release these videos within 21 days of the incident. Our videos will likely be very similar to LAPD's videos. In conclusion, I believe these measures I just mentioned will play a vital role of ensuring accountability and transparency within the state police.
Senator Boudreaux.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I guess I'll start with Colonel Davis. Hearing this 15-person unit, and based on your testimony on last week, I sense, first of all, the urgency of doing this. And I guess it also highlighted where we were prior to you becoming the head, as the colonel of our state police unit. A couple questions. So I know you presented it and everything. How long before this unit is in place? And what are we doing in the interim? Where are we as far from procedural standpoints for all the items that have been identified as those happen today, tomorrow, or in the future before the unit's in place? How are those being handled, sir?
So I appreciate your question, Senator Boudreaux. As far as the policies have already been in effect. As far as the investigations, current investigations are handled by our Criminal Investigative Division. And I decided to keep it that way until we get this unit trained up. What I did not want to do is take current Criminal Investigative Division personnel that were selected without the proper training, without the proper resources, and then put them in that role without them having adequate resources and tools. So as far as the timing of it, we've just selected those personnel. We're moving them over to that particular unit. They're going to go through some training. They've already begun going to training. In fact, I've sent some of them up to training up, I think, in Connecticut. So we're going to continue to build their training, build that foundation, and once we do that, and I feel comfortable that they are trained at that level, then at that point they will take over those investigations. But as of now, we do have some current investigations, and those investigations will continue to be handled by our Criminal Investigative Division personnel. They're well trained. However, as we continue to move forward, this selected group will be focused only on just those. And I really want to talk about that current process. You know, it's not as though our current Criminal Investigative Division personnel are not knowing what they're doing. They're some of the better and best in the state and the region and in the United States. However, they also have other duties. And oftentimes when you have those duties, you have other duties, you have other cases, then that takes you away from your primary mission of learning and continuing to stay on top of those best practices. So this particular group will be focused only on that force investigative model. They will not have some of the other general investigative duties that our current Criminal Investigative Division has.
And you pretty much, that's where I was trying to go. First of all, the current CIU operations is in place, but I wanted to ask publicly because again, let me reiterate, I think the Force Investigative Unit is something that's it's needed, and that we will have a process in place to identify those that go directly to it. And my question was going to be, so to take away, to form this, what is going to be lacking? Where are the resources? Because we talked a little bit on last week about funding and budget, and I know we're in an academy that just started. So I don't want to sit here and send out a false perception that everything is going to be good with the personnel we have, knowing you're over 200 short today, and the academy that just started last week. So I want to keep that in perspective from a financial standpoint, so that the expectation meets the financial obligation that's needed to make this work. The other thing that I made note of after last week's is the number of people that's approaching retirement. So I think for me, one of the most important things about the FIT model, about this whole thing, is that we develop it and it's in place to take care of some problems that we have identified. Lieutenant Colonel Van Buren just hit on that they're there, and we know it, you all know it, and so that none of those fall through the cracks. I guess my final, and I'll defer to the other members of the committee. I think Major Turner hit it in his presentation about chokeholds, and I'm trying to figure out where are we chokeholds? Why are they still allowed at all? Where are we with that?
So to answer that, and whether we like it or not, oftentimes whenever we get into a physical confrontation with someone, there are no rules with regards to how a suspect will attack an officer or trooper. I think we've realized that with one of our troopers being killed just while he was sitting in his vehicle. So when we're faced with those uncertainties, when we're faced with those obstacles and those challenges, then we have to be able to allow our personnel to defend themselves. And if that is the only tool that they have available to them, then we want to provide them the tools available to them to save themselves so that they can continue to save any and everybody else that may be under attack. That's why it's still a part. But we made sure, and it's in our training, it's in our policy, it's in our culture, we're changing the culture, and people understand that that is not available unless lethal force is authorized. And lethal force means that someone is trying to take your life. And I think that's important for us to be able to, not just with state police, but to provide our law enforcement professionals any and all available tools to save their lives. We're the ones that we're going to the fight, we're fighting the fight, and we're putting ourselves in harm's way. We have to be able to provide our men and women tools necessary to be able to defend themselves and save their lives.
Yeah, thank you. That's all for now, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Jackson for some questions.
Mr. Turner, where were you before you took this position?
As Command Inspector, I was the Region 3 CID Commander.
Region 3. Does that encompass Troop F?
Yes.
Okay. And I understand things are under investigation. May 2019, were you supervising the investigation, or those who were investigating Ronald Green?
Yes, I was the commander over that investigation.
And now, when were you promoted to handle use of force?
In February of this year.
Okay. So everyone knows I'm direct. I'm a major state police supporter, and I thought that originally I was being put in a precarious situation by being on this committee, but then I realized that I support those who protect and serve, and so I'm not. I'm going to ask a very pointed question. How, if we still have an investigation going on that investigation, are you guys moving up the ladder before we close out the investigation on whether Ronald Green was investigated properly?
Ma'am, may I answer that
Yeah.
question?
You know, I'm very pointed when I ask, because that concerns me when I'm looking at names that are in a report of an open investigation,
Yes, ma'am.
Colonel. And then let me finish, because I want to be, because I respect you a lot, and you were not there when it happened, and I'll keep putting that on the record.
Yes, ma'am.
But I want to make sure that as we move forward, those who are being promoted to deal with the use of force issues, and I'm not saying that in any way you had anything to do with anything that happened. You were not on the scene. But as I understand it, you were over supervising the investigation, those who were investigating Ronald Green. That investigation is not over. And so we don't have the end results of who acted in what way. But then I'm seeing from Troop F in the region, a lot of people being promoted who were part of that investigation.
Yes, ma'am.
And I'm going to ask, how does that happen before we close out the investigation?
Well, ma'am, thank you for that question, and I appreciate, your pointed questions. I will be the first to tell you that, when we embark upon this process, and I was not here during that particular time. I was not a part of that. I was not a part of the investigations. However, I am now responsible for our agency. I'm responsible for the actions of our agency and our personnel, and I'm also responsible for those promotions that have taken place under my command. And as I conduct my promotions, I look at any and everyone, and I tell my men and women, our men and women are put in vicarious positions in everything they do. They conduct the investigations. And frankly, and I apologize if this comes off harsh, I don't want to seem like I'm being sarcastic, but if we were to consider all of the investigations that may be under scrutiny, then we would not have many promotions to go by.
No, I understand that. That's not harsh,
But,
yeah.
I look up and down, I call our personnel, and I tell my commanders, I tell my supervisors this. As we go through our promotion process, I call people that work for you, I call people that you work for, I call people that are equal to you, I call any and all around this department to determine whether or not they're suitable for promotion. And when I determine that they are suitable, when they've met the qualifications, regardless of whether or not they've been a part of a scrutinized investigation or whether or not they're a part of an investigation that's still ongoing, if they have not been investigated themselves or are not currently under investigation according to policy, then they are still suitable for promotion. And I'm going to follow that policy.
And I agree with that, but I think this is one of those unique situations that everyone that, touched this investigation have been called into question, whether it's fair or not. And I'm not saying not to promote people, but what happens if under this investigation, those who are being promoted that had a hand in that investigation are found to be complicit?
If they're found.
And let me finish. And it's unique to me that we're promoting people that are part of use and force investigations, not a part of whether they used force,
Yes, ma'am.
but whether they were complicit in covering up a use of force incident. And now they are writing the policies and adopting the best practices. That's my concern, and that's not toward you. I'm going to ask everyone that question that was promoted in Troop F during that time. Because, see, that's the difference. It's not whether an officer, for me, is a part of a use and force investigation. Those are filed every day, right? But whether they're a part of a particular investigation as to whether there was a cover-up. And I love Troop F. They're in my district. But when I'm talking to constituents every day, I know names not because I've personally met people right now. I know names because of what's being said every day about how many people were involved in what seems to be, and I always say seems to be because everyone is innocent until proven guilty, a cover-up. But we do know that videos were hidden on certain cases in Troop F, that body cams weren't brought forward in Troop F. I don't have to speak to one case. We do know a lot happened in Troop F, and I have a lot of good state police in Troop F, and so I'm not saying that they did it, but someone in Troop F did. And my concern is not over really promotions. My concern is if it is a question right now on an investigation of the magnitudes that are coming out of Troop F, how are we implementing best practices without knowing? And using certain people to implement best practices without knowing, because that investigation, internal affairs hasn't completed it, right?
The investigations as far as internal affairs,
Okay.
their
Yeah, of course.
investigation is complete.
As far as the
However,
federal government.
that's correct, ma'am. And frankly, I do not know who all the federal government has implicated, who all the federal government has interviewed. As such, I have to act upon the information that I have in front of me at that particular time.
And I'm not saying that everyone in Troop F, I'm not saying you were implicit in it. Let me be clear, but we're in that gray area.
Yes, ma'am.
And we're right in the middle of trying to correct something that occurred. The crust of it for me, because I'm local, happened there, right? So what happens if we do this whole policy around hiring those that are part of these federal investigations? Let's take it a little narrow, because everything is not being federally investigated. And then we find out that they're a part of it. Then does that, the year or 6 months worth of work and best practices go out the window, because the public will still have no trust in us? And I say us because we operate as a unit. You said it. This is not just a state police problem. This is a state problem. How we deal with it is going to be very pointed. And Colonel, you know, I love and respect you. I tell people all the time, the Colonel was not there when this happened, nor should he answer for it. That's where I've always been. But now, the promotions that are happening while federal investigation is still going on are concerning. Now, if they were promoted to street captain, whatever, I don't know the promotions. But to be promoted to be over best practices while federal investigation is going on, it's concerning to me, and I'm gonna be honest, it is. Because what happens is if somebody's found complicit, we're back at day one. We can't introduce that as a best practice at that point.
I would like to clarify, Major Turner is over our criminal investigative division. That FIU, that Force Investigative Unit, that is now being built with Captain Mark Fontenot, who's not a part of any part of this investigation, that is reporting directly to me. That entire chain of command is reporting directly to me. It's not reporting to Major Turner. And not that I have any problems with Major Turner,
Right.
but based upon best practices, just like I have done with internal affairs, now that FIU unit is reporting directly to me.
And I have no problem with Major Turner, but I'm going to ask that question about anyone that's in the report that was a part of the investigation that's now a part of a federal investigation. Because and maybe with this one you've explained it, but what does criminal investigation do, Major Turner? What do you guys generally investigate?
Virtually, FIU's taking away part of our responsibilities. We investigate officer-involved shootings. Currently, what I listed before, officer-involved shooting and custody death, use of chokeholds, and those are relatively new policies over the last year, and also major crimes, any type of homicide or major crime that's referred to us.
Okay, so in your previous position, because I definitely want to stay away from asking you particular cases that are under investigation, have you always taken the advice of the investigators regarding an incident? Those investigators that you supervise, have you always taken their advice given regarding what should happen to officers who are involved in investigations of use of force?
I hate to use the word always, but I've got highly trained investigators that I give the latitude to do their job.
No, I understand. I think you know what I'm asking.
Yes,
Were there instances where you didn't take the advice of those who were investigating matters?
not that I recall.
Not that you recall. Okay, so if at some point when all this is over, an investigation comes out that your investigator advised you of one thing in a case and you guys didn't do it, we're not going to see that at some point as investigations close.
That is correct.
Okay. And are we not permitted to ask questions about particular cases today? Let me say that I know we're permitted. Are your officers not permitted to answer questions about particular cases today?
Ma'am, it would not be in the best interest. We do have ongoing lawsuits. We do have legal matters that prohibit us from being able to answer certain specified or specific questions.
And so, since your internal affairs investigation is over, are your officers permitted today to answer questions about internal affairs investigations that have completed?
Well, again, those cases may also be involved in legal matters.
So if it's an internal affairs closed but involved in a legal matter, and I'm an attorney, so I just want to get understanding because I don't want to put any officers in a precarious position today.
I appreciate that because that is in fact the case. We do have several ongoing cases that are legal and currently under legal adjudication, I
Right.
guess you will.
Whether it be civil or otherwise.
That's
Yeah.
correct. Yes,
And
ma'am.
I understand that as an attorney. That's why I want to make sure I'm asking things that they can answer instead of having them continue to say, I can't answer that. And the
Thank you.
general public kind of takes it as they don't want to answer. So if I get to that point with you, just let me know, okay? Now, your new investigation, your new role, you're investigating use of force, though, am I correct?
That will be under the FIU, which will report directly to Colonel Davis.
So chokeholds is not use of force?
Yes, it is.
Okay, so I guess I'm getting a little confused. When you said, what do you investigate, you talked about chokeholds and new items.
We would do that for CID going forward once the FIU is fully functional. We'll do that for other agencies like sheriff's offices and police departments. FIU will strictly do it for internal, for DPS-related incidents.
Yeah. And I'll tell everyone I'm still going to follow it and track the investigations because I'm still going to have a concern of anyone who was complicit in any way in any of these investigations that have the state tied up in meaningless litigation. I mean, things that shouldn't have happened is in any way investigating any law enforcement agency. And I just want to be very pointed and clear on that.
Yes, ma'am.
And I know, Colonel, because you're always on your job, that if someone is, then I'm sure you'll rethink what happened out of Troop F and who was promoted.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Fields for some questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Colonel, let me just first ask a question. About earlier this year, the Legislative Black Caucus requested the Department of Justice to do a pattern and practice investigation of state police. Have you heard from the Department of Justice?
Not as of late, no, sir.
Have you heard from the Department of Justice as it relates to that investigation?
Not on that request, no, sir.
You know, I think the problem with state police is not funding. I think it's more of accountability. I think everybody have in their folder a document that I had staff to do a comparison with other states across the union in terms of funding and the number of troopers per capita, and we're right in line with other states with our population. In fact, I think, and I'm an advocate of law enforcement. I'm not one of these legislators. In fact, I don't know of any legislator in the Senate who advocates defund police. I think we passed a resolution this past session advocating just the opposite. I think Senator Boudreaux was the author of it, or was it? Yeah. So you don't have anybody advocating defunding the police in the Senate that I know of, but I don't think we have a funding problem with state police. I think we have an accountability problem. How many of our uniform officers, patrol officers, don't have body cameras?
As far as the last count, all of our primary, and when I say primary, those are uniformed troopers, DPS officers that work uniform every day. They're all outfitted with body-worn cameras.
Okay. So any incident that happens with a primary officer, you would have video, you would have body camera.
And I say most cases because we do know we have technological malfunctions. We do know we have those situations, but we are and have and continue to put things in place to have backups and things of that nature. So if there is a situation whereby a body camera would malfunction, we have and we have purchased additional body-worn cameras to put at the troops.
Right, but we went through that last meeting. If there's a problem when a person reports
That's right.
at the beginning of the day, if they have malfunctions with their body-worn camera, they are to report it to their supervisor, and y'all supposed to deal with that before they even go out there in the field.
Yes, sir.
Because the body-worn camera is to protect the trooper and the public, but so we have a way to deal with that. So every officer who's who's patrolling in uniform patrol have body-worn cameras, correct?
They should.
All right, and so how many use of force incidents do you have? How many open cases do you have at present?
I would have to consult with my internal affairs or my use of force experts to get that information. I don't have it right here, right now.
Okay, you got several officers here. Who here can answer that question? Can you, sir?
I can answer on the criminal side, not the administrative side.
All right, well, answer on the criminal side, because I want to know, because that was an article that I read the other day, and I made a comment about it, because one use of force is too many.
Yes, sir.
And there's never, in a happy day when officers are using force, unnecessary force, rather. So what's the number?
Typically, well, we've investigated, now this is statewide, including state police and other agencies that we've investigated.
All right, do you have it broken down with state police? I'm really concerned about state police. I'm not concerned about other agencies today.
On the criminal side for 2021, we've got 3 criminal use of force related, and that's officer-involved shootings for the state police. The stuff I mentioned before, officer-involved shooting, custody death, things potentially dealing with criminal issues related to use of force, not administrative.
So we have 3 officer-involved use of force for state police for 2021?
Yes, sir. Now, let me correct, that's 4. It's actually 4.
What? Okay, and go on. What other use of force?
That's as far as the records I have with me, I've got it broken down to. But it's any use of force. Typically, there are officer-involved shootings or in custody deaths, but it could be a ramming incident or something along those lines.
So you're saying the total use of force is 4, and they are all officer-involved shootings for 2021?
Criminal, yes, sir.
Okay. What about 2020?
Senator, and forgive me, but before we give you any bad numbers, I'd like to consult and make sure that we give you proper numbers, and I'm not trying to stall. I just would rather give you specific and give you the information you're requesting. I don't want to give you some bad numbers.
I have those numbers, and before this meeting is over with, I'm going to share your numbers with you, because I think we requested those numbers, and I think you provided them for us, but those are not the correct numbers. Well, let me not say they're not correct numbers. Those are not the numbers that I recall reading.
The numbers that you requested, if you don't mind me responding, there was a request for the last 5 years of use of force incidents involving citizen complaints. Am I correct?
That was a request I had made.
Yes, sir.
And I'm not sure if the committee made any other formal requests or not. The committee secretary is saying no. It may have come directly from Senator Fields' office.
Okay. I will make sure I get you the correct number, Senator Fields.
Okay, so the other question I have is how many the CVI video? Explain that to me. What is CVI video?
Senator, it's actually critical incident briefing videos. It's the 8 to 10 minute, and it would be the length needed to adequately explain. It may be a 15-minute video, but it's just a factual video that explains the sequence of events that happened during a critical incident.
All right, is that available now?
From us, no, sir.
Okay. Is there any reason it's not?
really, at this particular point in time, we're in the process of research. And as I mentioned before, that's best practice, but, you know, that's something we also have to consult with our partners. And when I say our partners, whether it be district attorneys' offices as well as other law enforcement partners, before we get to that point. The reason why it's not available now is because we haven't just gotten to the point of being able to build that into our program. This is a part of our force investigative unit, and once we get to the point of crossing that hurdle, identifying, having the resources, having the personnel learn what those videos are comprised of and the legal ramifications of it, then at that point we can push it forward. But we still have a couple of steps we need to go before we get to that point of being able to legally as well as just push it out to everybody.
Okay, when you say legal ramifications, tell me what you mean when you
Well,
say.
just learning, just making sure that we're not pushing out information and or evidentiary information that may cause the district attorney to not be able to prosecute their case properly.
Okay, if it's true and correct, how would they not be able to prosecute their case properly?
And honestly, Senator Fields, we are learning, and that's why I don't have an answer as to that. We are having those conversations. We have had conversations with some of the other jurisdictions that have implemented that program, and that's one of the concerns that was communicated to us. Make sure that we are not obstructing or just prohibiting the other partners from being able to adjudicate that case. So we're not at a point just yet to where we can push that information out. We're also in the process. We have to hire people and make sure that we have people that technically that can produce these videos and understand what our concept is and what we're trying to do. So again, because this is a new process, it's a new concept, we have to put the right people in place. We have to put the right resources, and we have to make sure that we're not, again, jeopardizing that case in other ways.
Well, I mean, you certainly wouldn't be obstructing anything by making the evidence that you obtained during the time of the incident available to the public. I mean, I just think that more transparency would be a good thing, not a bad thing. I think that would be helpful to the public.
Yes, sir.
And lastly, we talked last week about you putting a box on these reports, on these use of force report, whether or not there was video. Well, not just use of force, all reports. And you said you were going to look into that. Have you had a chance to think about putting a box on all of your reports to indicate whether or not there is video available on the different types of reports that you take?
That is definitely something that we're in the process of discussing now. I know we have them on the use of force reports, but as far as some of the other crash investigative reports and things of that nature, some of those reports are statewide reports, so we have to consult with, again, our partners, because we're not just changing a report for state police, we're changing a report for the entire law enforcement community. So we have to consult with them, but as far as I'm concerned, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, because one of the reasons why we're here is because some of your officers were less than transparent.
Yes, sir.
With video that was actually available that was not made available.
Sir.
So, I just think that's helpful if all your officers are equipped with the equipment to record the information. At the end of the report, you just check the box. And so when the supervisor receives, the report, they know the video is there, and you can actually review it. I just think that's a good thing to do.
Yes, sir.
And I would highly recommend that you do it.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. I have a couple of follow-up questions myself. I did make the request through the committee staff for the stats on citizen complaints of excessive force over the last 5 years to try to get an understanding for myself and the committee. Has there been a spike? Has it been about the same, or has it gone down? And then why you think the trends are where they are. So have you been able to get that information? And if you could comment on that, I'd appreciate it.
Yes, sir. And I don't want to say whether it's a spike or it's going down, because oftentimes when we look at things, there are some other external factors we have to consider, COVID being one of those. Whenever we don't have people out in the public, we don't have the activities. Oftentimes when we're looking at use of force incidents and or events, a lot of those occur in situations where there's large crowds or situations that has that type of activity. Because COVID has canceled a lot of parades, canceled Mardi Gras, canceled a lot of the events that we would typically be involved in use of force events, there has been a decline. But likewise, we've also contributed and or participated in some initiatives that has put us in positions that, again, that brought attention or created situations where we were involved in use of force events. As I mentioned before, we're now participating in violent crime initiatives, drug initiatives in the cities. And when we participate in those type of events, oftentimes that they also lead to those type. So we hadn't seen anything that's markedly different or significantly different as far as spike up tremendously, but it's been right in line considering the events or lack thereof.
You know, it seemed to me that although it's not an exact science, that when you make changes in your policy, that you would expect at least that the complaints would go down. I would think. Is that fair?
Well, sometimes they go up whenever you invoke accountability, and whenever you put things into place, sir, that you have new technology, you have new reporting requirements, and you have accountability built in. Oftentimes, you do actually see an increase because now you're getting the reporting that you may not have gotten in the past. And I'm okay with that as long as we can now take a look at it and say, okay, now this is the numbers we have. Let's see why we have these numbers, and let's see how we can bring these numbers down. That's when we start to invoke training, de-escalation training, implicit bias training, things of that nature. And then as we put those things, and those things that we're putting in place in training now at this particular time, well, I want to see how that resonates as we move forward. So the next year or so, we should be seeing a decline when we bring that type of training to our agency and to our personnel, and that's what I expect to see.
And while we're on training, that was very interesting. We talked about it the last, or hit me at least, about the detriment by having these inconsistent academies. Right now, it seems like when we have money, we have an academy, then we might go 2 or 3 years and have another academy. How much does an academy cost to run?
Roughly about $6.2 million. And what we've done in the past, Mr. Chairman, is like all agencies, we have events, catastrophes, and weather events, and we respond to them. And when we respond to those, it takes money, it takes overtime, it takes equipment and such to respond to those types of events. Well, that's money in the past that we've used that was academy money. So we no longer have that money. That money is not replaced, so we can not have an academy. And there's a lot of things that are impacted when you do not have those academies consistently. One is the level of personnel, and we talk about our training, and I'm proud of our training, but it also starts with the character of the people that you employ. And if you cannot have a consistent academy, then sometimes you do not get the very best personnel that's available, because they want to know, hey, if I'm coming out of the military, if I'm coming out of college, I want to know when that next academy is. Well, I can't tell you. I can tell you we're going to have one eventually, but I can't tell you when because I'm waiting on funding. So now they're going to Dallas PD. They're going to other agencies. And, we vet the people that we have. We get the best people we can. And we have some very, very good people. But not having that consistent academy impacts that. But it also impacts, some of the other things, the strain on the personnel that's out there working. Because, again, if we go 2 or 3 years without an academy, we're 200 and 300 people short. Now they have to work longer hours. They have to work details that they would not ordinarily have to work, and that's taking them away from their families. They're also a part and are going through some of the weather events, hurricanes, their houses destroyed, but yet they're still out there working and keeping our communities safe. That's additional stress. So those are some other contributing factors that it impacts our agency, and we have to look out for that. So we do as good of a job as possible as supervisors to recognize that, and then in turn pull those people back and say, hey, look, we need you to go spend time with your family.
And so when you put your budget together, and I know you're fairly new at this, do you recommend an academy every year or every other year? How have you been putting your budgets together?
So yes, sir, we have. And frankly, I have been taken out of other areas in order to fulfill the academies. And I've said that I was going to have an academy every year as long as I'm the superintendent. And I think that's important because, again, when you look at the rise in fatalities, the rise in serious injury crashes, the rise in things like that, oftentimes those are direct correlation to not just the engineering of the road, but whether or not you have troopers and law enforcement personnel that's visible, deterring those aggressive drivers, deterring that bad behavior. And not having them out there oftentimes lead people to do things that they sometimes do. And that leads to fatalities. So I think it's important for us to have these academies, regardless of what goes on. It reduces the stress of the personnel that we have and increases really the resources that we have to save lives. We put additional personnel out there so that we can deter people. It's not about writing tickets. It's about changing bad behavior and saving lives.
Colonel, if you'll stay at the table, I'm going to move to the next
Yes, sir.
item on our agenda, which is former and current Louisiana State Police employees requested by committee members. And just for the public's, put this on the record, I invited my fellow committee members to make recommendations for former and current state police employees that they would like to come testify today. I received 4 names between the committee members of former and current state police employees who our committee secretary sent the request, Colonel, to you this past Wednesday, December 8th. And I'll just put on the record what I know so far about the requests. One was for retired Colonel Kevin Reeves, who was the head of state police. He actually called me this weekend and told me he would not appear because of ongoing investigations. So I wanted to put that on the record. Lieutenant John Cleary called our committee staff, I believe, on Friday or Thursday of last week, and said he would not be able to appear because of active cases. And then an attorney by Mr. Mike Small called on behalf of Master Trooper Corey York and said he would not be able to appear because of ongoing investigations. And so that's what I've heard back either directly or through our staff. So I don't expect any of them to be here today. But I do believe Sergeant Albert Paxton is here, and he was the 4th person we had requested. Is Sergeant Paxton here today? Okay.
Mr. Chairman, I do want to advise that we do have ongoing discipline cases with some of the personnel or former personnel, and that would put me in a precarious situation to speak regarding anything that they have to say because of that particular thing ongoing. So they're free to get up here and speak with you, but as far as me speaking with them, that may put me in a precarious situation.
And Colonel, that's your right to do what you think is advisable and what's best for the agency.
Yes, sir.
Let me recognize Senator Fields.
I'm sorry, I missed that. And I do have a couple questions about the witnesses that we have requested to be present today. You said that you have ongoing discipline matters.
Appeals and such, yes, sir, with some of the personnel
Okay, well,
that are here.
there are 2 individuals who are, I do understand the request of former Colonel Kevin Reeves. He is a former employee of the state, and certainly he didn't have to appear before us because he's no longer an employee of the state. So I can appreciate that. but I do not understand the position of Trooper Corey York, nor do I understand Lieutenant John Cleary. How did you, we requested it through the colonel, did we not, Mr. Chairman?
We did.
Okay.
Our committee
Colonel,
staff sent a letter to the colonel Wednesday morning.
my question to you would be, how did you communicate to these three individuals, two who were not here, to be present today?
Tasked my legal staff with notifying them that they were being requested by the Senate. I know there was one point of contention with regards to whether or not, because we advised them that they were not being subpoenaed. I have, in my particular duties, have the authority to compel troopers to talk with regards to investigations. And I think it's prudent for the state, it's prudent for this body, as well as prudent for those troopers, that I notify them under what conditions that they are being requested. So as such, I notified them that they were not being subpoenaed because, again, I did not want them to think that they're being compelled to talk by me.
Do you think it's appropriate for you to not have them here today?
Again, I did not tell them not to show up. I told them under what conditions they were being requested.
So what conditions are they being requested?
Simply that they were not being subpoenaed, that they were being requested to speak with the Oversight Committee.
Okay, so you told your employees that they were not being subpoenaed by the committee. They could choose not to show up if they so desired.
I did not tell them that they could not show up or show up. I told them that they were being requested.
All right. Well, that leads me to a broader question,
Yes,
Mr.
sir.
Chairman. If you can just give me a few minutes, because there lies some of the problems with state police. I think there is an organizational problem. Who is your boss?
My boss is the governor.
Okay. So you're appointed by the governor?
Yes, sir.
So what is your official title?
I am the Superintendent of State Police, Deputy Secretary of Department of Public Safety.
All right. Well, I tend to disagree with you. Your boss is not the governor. Your boss is the Secretary of Public Safety and Corrections,
Yes, sir.
not the governor.
Yes, sir.
When the last time you talked to the Secretary of Public Safety and Correction?
I do not have the exact date, but it was at a function. I think it was at a memorial.
There's an organizational problem we have with state police. So you don't communicate with your boss, though he appointed you. You do realize that the secretary appointed you, do you?
I'm not in the room when those appointments are made, Senator Fields, so I can't tell you who
Let me
directly
share this
appointed.
with the committee and with the
Sergeant Art.
can the sergeant at
Can
all-
you pass these out to the committee members?
Can you give that to him? Because one of the problems we have with state police is it appears that they do not know the pecking order. Yeah, I got some more. On November the 2nd or November the 9th, the Louisiana Senate received from Mr. James LeBlanc. You were confirmed by the Senate, were you not?
Yes, sir.
And we received the request from Mr. James LeBlanc, who is the Secretary of Department of Public Safety and Correction.
You are correct. Yes, sir.
And that's who appointed you.
And I apologize for that. That was miscommunication on my part.
And that's who submits your payroll every month.
Yes, sir.
And yet you don't talk to him.
I do talk to him, yes, sir.
Well, when the Senate requests an employee of the state, the Senate expects that person to show up. How far does he live from here?
Which employee is that, sir?
The two that didn't show up.
I don't know the exact distance. I don't have their
Well, let's
address.
take Mr. John Cleary. He said he's active working cases. How far does he live from here?
I don't know his exact address at this point.
All right,
sir.
well, you got a bunch of folk here who we have no, look, these are great, outstanding troopers, but we have no use for you all today. The colonel may, but none of you are called as witnesses, but there are a few people we do have a use for. Now, I want to know how far does he live, because we have an interest in him. Now, let me say this now, because I'm a lawyer. If he chooses not to testify, he has that right. And if his lawyer says he shouldn't testify, he has that right. But he does not have the right to just defy the rights of this committee. And we don't have to subpoena him. And as Colonel, I would think that you would say, if the Senate calls you, you should show up. You don't have to testify, but you should at least give them the courtesy to show up. So I would think that, I don't know how far he lives, but he should show up. Now, Trooper York, the chair says that he heard from his lawyer. I guess that he's invoking the Fifth Amendment. That's his right. And I'm going to be a little light on Mr. York, because at least his lawyer called. And I wouldn't expect him to show up. But his lawyer should at least have the courtesy to put it in writing. But I would like the chairman to at least have his lawyer to send a letter to the committee and put it in writing. But as to Mr. Cleary, unless his lawyer called and want to put something in writing, I would expect him to be here before the committee. Mr. Colonel, so you want to take a brief break?
Yes, sir.
Why don't we go on, Mr. Vice Chair, with the next witness as well, while the Colonel can step out and get some information for you.